Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Michael Keenan, and today we're going to be sitting down and speaking with Casey Carrington, who's the founder of Speak Outside the Box. Now, Casey has an incredible practice focused on helping children overcome speech and language challenges. Her team's child-directed approach and evidence-based interventions have transformed the lives of many families. So today we're going to dive into not only how methods have made a lasting impact on families and children's lives, but also how she's gone about building her own business in the kind of coaching consulting space. So if you're an online coach or consultant, you're going to find a lot of value in today's conversation. So first and foremost, Casey, thank you so much for taking the time out to join me today.
Of course. Thanks so much, Michael. I appreciate the introduction. I'm excited to chat.
Awesome, cool. My first question, Casey, how do you define yourself? Like, what do you call yourself? What do you say your job is? What's your title?
Well, I'm a speech language pathologist. I am a private practice owner, and I am a parenting with autism coach. So all of those three things. And I would also consider myself like a healer and a mentor, an artist. They all kind of just all interconnect.
Of course. Awesome. Okay, and take me back to where the path into being a speech language pathologist started for you. Was there something that happened in your own life which led to this? Was there something you saw outside of your own life? How did this come about, and what was your kind of first step into this world?
When I graduated high school and going into college, I always knew that I wanted to go into a profession of helping people. It's just something that I wanted to do. I looked into different areas. I was in a bio degree looking to be a occupational therapist. The school that I went to had a speech pathology program, and I just on a whim took a class. I really loved it. I originally wanted to work with older patients in the medical aspect of speech pathology, and then I took a job working with autistic children, and that was before I went to grad school. But ever since that experience, I was like, I really love autism. I love the challenges that come with working with those that are, every single child is completely different with a completely different need. So lots of like problem solving and creativity in finding a plan that works for the specific child. I think that's what really like drew me to the field in this specific niche.
Got it. And how long ago was this? How long ago did you get started in this field?
So I'm 36, and I graduated with my master's degree when I was 28, and I actually 27, and I started my own practice when I was 30. So, yeah, it's been almost 7 years owning my practice. I was working for a company that was back-to-back clients, burned out after like my first year in the field, and I was like, I have to do my own thing. I have to start, following my heart and working with children in a way that feels good for me. And then, yeah, here we are.
Got it. There's a lot to unpack there, which really interests me. So let's start with when you started and you're working for another company. What does that look like? Like you're basically just working on an hourly rate with people coming in, solving very specific problems for them. How are you working with families, and what did that look like? How were you achieving kind of target outcomes?
Yeah, really good question. I personally wanted to go into the private practice realm, right? So you could work, a speech language pathologist could work in schools, hospitals, nursing homes. I specifically wanted to do private practice, which is pediatric therapy. So working with kiddos ages 1 to 18. I took a job at a private practice, a salary position. I think it was like out of school, like 60,000, which was amazing for me. But I had kids back to back from the hours of 8 a.m. to 6, 30-minute increments. So I was seeing like 15 to 16 kids a day in and out. And I didn't feel like I didn't have the capacity to support them given that 30 minutes of time, which also included writing a note for insurance and for documentation. It also included talking with the parent. So after the child becomes comfortable with you, it's like it's time to go. So I did a year of that, and it was tough. And a lot of SLPs experience this and continue in that way of working, which is very
Yes. What was that? What was that term you just used there? You said a lot of
SLPs, speech language
SLPs. Got it.
pathologists.
Speech language
Yes,
pathologist. Got it. Cool.
yes.
I'm with you.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I
And so,
think that the biggest downside of our profession is burnout, because a lot of us have like the desire to help so much, and then the way that we're able to do it isn't really met, and there's a breakdown there. So yeah.
yes. Okay. Now, you mentioned at the end of your first year or around that time, you then opened your own practice. Is that correct? Talk me through that transition and how did your kind of delivery of the service change when you opened your own practice compared to kind of just servicing 16 different families within a day prior?
Yeah, so I should kind of back up and let you know that when you're a speech language pathologist, the first year out of grad school is called your clinical fellowship. And that is 9 to 12 months working under supervision of an SLP. My experience was in the homes in New York. I'm originally from upstate New York, and I was working in the home setting. So I was going into different homes. I was working with parents. I had like, 6 kiddos a day, and I would drive to their homes. But it was very intimate, and they were hourly sessions. I felt really fulfilled in that role. When I moved to Florida and took my first job, the one that I just explained to you, my first real job licensed as an SLP, it was a completely different thing. Right? It was 16 kids instead of 6, and it was 30 minutes back to back, and it was in an office with four white walls, and there wasn't much naturalistic intervention. So I already had a really good experience. I already had something that was like, wow, I could compare it, right? There was contrast between the two. So when I started my own practice, I knew like there was a different way of doing things, which a lot of SLPs, a lot of speech pathologists might not know because they might not have had that experience. So I'm very grateful for that. I was in my first job, and I met a woman who was a private practice owner, and we connected, and I started working for her for about 6 months, and then I opened my own practice. So she was also a bridge for me. Um, when I say I
Got it.
opened my own practice, what I really just did was I just started seeing clients that asked to see me on my own
Mhm.
terms, right? And so that grew gradually. I started with maybe 5 clients, and it grew. But people, if you're good at what you do, people talk and
Mhm.
people start just coming to you. And so that's what happened for me. I think that there is a psychologist in the area that found my name, and then she just started referring clients to me. Um, and I was able to give all of myself to them for 60 minutes. And then I was able to come home, and I was able to, I was inspired and fulfilled to continue to do my own work outside of the hour that I was with the client, because I had the space to, and I was also getting paid too. So like, when you start your own practice, I do think it's really, really important to have a rate that feels good. You
Mhm.
feel, um, you're being met in, because to give the work that you do in healing or coaching or working in this really delicate area, like you need to get back the same amount of energy, and that comes in payment. And so a big lesson for me and all of this was like, wow, I need to ask for what I deserve. And that's a very
Yeah.
scary thing. I think the scariest thing going into practice.
I can imagine so. How did you, real quick, I'm curious, how much of an impact going from 30-minute back to back to back slots to 60 minutes from the sounds of it, and then also having some other time kind of at the end of there, whenever it would be, to kind of allocate to each client as well, or each family, or each child. How much of an impact did that have on the results you were able to help them achieve throughout your time working with them?
Yeah, so the model is completely different. So two different models. You have like a clinical setting, and then you have a naturalistic setting. So that's the one factor that changes. The second factor that changes is like parent involvement, right? So when you're in a clinical setting for 30 minutes, a parent is involved, but they're really just watching. Whereas when you're in a home setting for 60 minutes, the parent is naturally involved because she's going to be helping the child go to the bathroom or helping the child clean up their toys or whatever it is. Like all the naturalistic opportunities are happening in the environment that I could hit on. So speech language is not supposed to be something that's taken out of a child's life. It's supposed to happen within the child's life. Communication is happening during every daily routine. So the impact that I can make teaching skills which within the natural occurring setting was much higher because they were naturally happening and I had the opportunity to. And so, for example, if you think of like mealtime, right? Breakfast. If I can teach a parent one thing to work on during breakfast time, they get to work on that every single day for 5 to 10 minutes. Whereas like in a 30 minute session in an office, I'm not going to be able to hit on those naturally occurring routines that are happening. So it's harder to generalize.
Yes.
Also, the impact I can make building trust with a family. It's more intimate. It's in their home. I get to see everything. It's vulnerable, you know, so I can connect with a parent so much deeper and build trust that can be sustainable as compared to the other setting. You know, my capacity to connect with someone is so much bigger when I don't have to meet 16 people a day back to back to back to back, you know? I
Mm-hmm.
have enough space to connect with someone if I'm only meeting 5 to 6 people a day. Does that make sense?
Yeah, certainly, certainly. And you're now, from what I understand, you're now based in Tampa, Florida. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Are you still working with all of your clients even today on a kind of one-to-one basis? You go to the house, or has that evolved over the time that you've been doing this? Like, talk me through the different levels of service, the different ways that you service
Mhm.
the children that you work with today.
Yeah, really good question. It's definitely evolved. Right now, I have a practice of 7 pediatric therapists, 2 occupational therapists, and 5 SLPs, including me. So my role is in running my practice and managing and mentoring my team, and then also having a few clients that I see directly, much less than I used to have. So right now, I see clients on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays directly one-on-one for about 90 minutes. Um, some kiddos I see 1 time a week, some kiddos I would see 2 times a week. And then I also meet with their parents regularly. So if I am not in direct contact with their parents, I'm meeting them over Zoom for consult sessions. Um, in addition, we have group therapy. So we have it's called our collective program. So kiddos who are autistic, typically their ability to communicate and connect with one person that they like, one adult, could be really high, but then to generalize those skills with peers in a more play-based setting is a little bit more challenging. So we have a program for these kiddos, and I kind of oversee that program. Um, and then I also have courses and intensives. So those are like a small group of parents, maybe 5 to 8 parents that I meet weekly for I have right now an eight week intensive. So my next one starts in September, but it will be 8 weeks long. I meet with 5 to 8 parents for an hour a week. And then they also have my course that they get 1 module a week. And that program is called Play Better. And what I'm working with parents on is how to connect with their children in a really playful way and why it's so important to be playful and to be naturalistic and not putting pressure on their children to communicate the science behind it, the neurobiology and all of that. And then kind of just like implementing it. We do video modeling. So the parent videos themselves playing, they send it to me, and then I meet with them one-on-one, and we talk about what was really good versus like what we can kind of modify and adjust. So many different ways I'm working with people, and it's evolving every
Yeah,
day and every moment, really.
I can imagine. So, and that's virtual. So that's on Zoom. Is that how you do that, or that's not in person, right?
Yes, yes, that is on Zoom.
Got it. And within that, I'm curious. I'd love to dig into that a little bit more. Like what's what's the promise? What's the outcome they get when a parent signs up to that? What are they hoping? I'm assuming obviously short term there's some benefit they can see in their child's life, but what's the North Star as to why a parent would invest in that sort of program for themselves and their child?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I will say that when I first started speech pathology and opening my own practice, I wanted to please the parents. I wanted to give the parent what they wanted of their child. So biggest thing is I want my kid to talk. So that's kind of where my focus was. Like, I want these kids to talk. I want their parents to be happy. And now it's, I want these parents to connect with their child so much so that that is not their biggest goal anymore. Their goal is to connect with their child and to figure out how to connect with them so deeply that their child's able to communicate and be in the world and participate and be intentional and be experience joy, connecting and being with other human beings. So to answer your question, I think it's to bring parents a sense of ease and trust in their child's journey of getting to their highest potential of communication, whatever that looks like, whether it's speaking verbally or whether it's using a different type of system to communicate, or whether it's just just being being a happy kid. So often it's I've I've learned that it's not the child I'm working with, it's really the parent, and opening them up to the potential and the possibilities that they can develop with their child.
I'm with you. And you said that's typically 5 to 8 or so parents in that sort of cohort model that you've got?
Yes. Yeah.
Got it. And how do you find doing that in a group setting? Is there enough similarity between the process that you use for each child to where you can teach it kind of compendiously over 8 weeks, and there's not too many different unique scenarios to where it becomes very hard to teach that in a group setting?
So, number one, I've noticed that there's so much power in parents of autistic kids being in a group and feeling seen, feeling heard, whether they're experiencing two different things. Typically, the energy is the same, right? So, for example, one parent has a child who's not communicating at all with words, and the other parent has a child that is communicating with words, but isn't connecting in a meaningful way. So they're both feeling like disconnected from their child. It's the same thing. It's just different. Does that make sense? So,
Of course.
and I use a model by Stanley Greenspan, who's a developmentalist, a child developmentalist, brilliant child developmentalist, and his model is called the floor time approach. He uses levels of development to describe a child's being like in any moment of time. And so these levels, I use levels 1 through 6, and basically the premise is if you can understand where your child falls in this moment, this is what you should be focusing on. And so I teach the parents these levels so that, one child may be operating in a level 2 and another child may be operating in a level 6, but we can all kind of meet and see where the child falls.
Yeah.
So it's a good way to kind of like have a spectrum and to be able to talk about it in a group, if that makes sense.
Totally. It certainly does. And if we step into the business lane of this just briefly, how are you selling this? Are you selling this just via they come across it and they buy it on a product page? Are you selling it via a sales call with the parents? Like how do you sell this?
Yeah, good question. So if we talk about my practice in Tampa, Speak Outside the Box, I never had to do any marketing. Our referrals were just naturally coming from community. Um, and I've never had to sell, quote unquote, sell anything. So when I started this intensive, I started it last year, actually August last year was my first intensive. all of my clients, I'm sorry, I had a group of 5, and 4 of those clients were clients that came to me from community trying to work with Speak Outside the Box. One of those was someone on Instagram that messaged me. Um, and in moving forward, I've been promoting it on Instagram, but majority of my clients are coming from my practice and coming from, the community in Tampa that I have already established. I am trying to get to a place where I can open it up to more people who are outside of Tampa who want to join my program. But I've probably only had like 3 other clients outside of Tampa that have joined my program. And that's just from following me on Instagram. I'm trying to figure out how do I, increase that in a way that feels good for me without having to be a crazy Instagram person and do all the
Yeah,
things.
I'm with you. So
So
most of the customers, most of the traffic for that has come via you in person, and I assume out of a conversation, it sounded like this was possibly a good fit for them, and that's how you sold them on it.
yeah, right now I have very little availability to work with clients one-on-one. So if a parent wants to work on with me, I say, yes, you can. This is the program that I'm offering at this time. And then they'll work with me directly. And then in the meantime, they'll work with one of my therapists at because it's almost like they say yes because they're like, okay, this is the way I can work with Casey, sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
with you. Okay, that's awesome that they value your expertise that much that they don't question it being in a group setting or whatever it may be. They're happy to sign up to kind of whatever you're offering, and they obviously trust that you've put something good together, right? Um, what out of curiosity that you said this is an eight week program, is that correct?
Yes.
What level of investment are parents committing to for an 8 week program that's going to help them achieve these sorts of results with their child?
Do you mean like how much is the program?
Yeah, like, and are there different options to it, or is it just one investment fee that you have? Is there different options to it? How do you structure that?
So the parent gets a breakdown of how much time they need to invest and obviously how much the intensive is. It is a group. They're meeting with me once a week, but in addition, every other week they meet with me one-on-one, and that is the video modeling piece. So that is them uploading a video, me watching the video, watching it with them over screen, stopping it, pausing it, telling them like, "Oh, this is great," or "Hey, like, let's next time try this." So that whole thing is also included in it, and I feel like that's the probably the bulk of the program is that one-on-one um, video analysis, and the program is 3,000. It's around 3,000 for the 8 weeks.
Got it. Awesome.
And again, I break it down for them. I believe that investing is like a really big part of finding my ideal client, right? So my ideal client is going to invest because it's meaningful. And the amount of the seeing 5 to 8 people in a cohort like that, like I didn't realize how energetic, how much you give like to hold space for 8 parents. It's a lot. So I started at 2,000 and I increased to 3,000 after my third cohort, just because I was like, I need more space, and more energy. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
got it. That's really cool. That is really cool. Are you content with where the investment is? Do you still feel like you're undercharging for what you're giving, or do you feel like that it kind of matches out pretty well?
That's a good question. I think I need to do a little bit. I need to do more. So September will be my fourth. I think I need to do more to really figure that out. Every time it gets easier because there's a little bit of fine tuning that comes with, every extra intensive that I hold. And I think that life in general, like, also has to do with it, right? Like, certain points of my life are going to be harder, and I just got married, and we're like in this phase where I want to transition to work less and hold space for a family. So yeah, right now things are becoming a little bit more harder, as in like energetically for me. And I think that those times I might increase my price because that's just what I have to do,
Yeah,
to feel good. Is that
of
making
course.
sense? Yeah.
It does. It certainly does. Okay, I'm with you. And how easy or difficult is it for you to fill those kind of 5, 6, 7, 8 slots every 8 weeks that you're doing one of these classes? Is it a stressor for you? Like, hey, like I don't have enough people like in the next cohort. Do you not mind? Like, what's that process like, and how's it been for the three that you've done so far?
The three I've done so far filled really pretty easily. And it usually filled like right at the end, ironically, like I didn't have anyone. And then all of a sudden, like the last 2 weeks, it was like, okay, like it's full. This cohort that I'm having in September, I only have two clients signed up for it. And, I'm really lucky because I don't need to do this, right? Like I have my practice and I have my clients. So financially, like I don't need to have this program. So if it doesn't fill, Michael, like I'm probably not going to have it. And I just am just surrender into like if it's meant to be, it will be. Um, I do want to gradually transition. Like there's a part of me that in like a year or two, like I want to be less of a private practice owner, less of a one-on-one individual SLP, and I want to just transition to more of these courses and intensives. This is what kind of fuels me. Um, so I want to put it out there, but I also don't want to attach to it if it doesn't happen because I know all these other things.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm glad you mentioned that. I was going to push back slightly because I know you said you don't mind, or you mentioned that you don't mind if it doesn't fill, but also you kind of mentioned that, look, you're looking for more family time, especially now that you're just married. This sounds like it could be that sort of kind of perfect model, right? Rather than being super involved in the private practice side. Um, Talk me through, let's say you did lean more into the online, as you kind of alluded to there. Um, if everything kind of went to plan, per se, over the next sort of kind of 12, 24 months, what's your long-term vision with the online side? If you really like leaned into this and dedicated even more of yourself to it, what does it look like? Would you continue doing it as is and just make each and every kind of cohort group every 8 weeks better? Is there more that you want to add in? Is there a different structure that you have in mind? What does that look
Yeah, I think that right now, like in my life, I probably spend like I'm probably working like 120%, right? Like my energy is going to my work, and it's because I love it, and I'm like it's not because I have to. On Saturday mornings I go to the coffee shop and I work for 5 hours, and I felt like I have to do the things, but I want to. So I think like looking into this next after of the 24 months, it's like I'm working like 50%. Right? The other 50% is
like?
dedicated to family, or the other 80, whatever it is dedicated to family. Um, and in that 50%, I want to do this play better intensive model. And I also have a really big yearning to work with other SLPs in a coaching way, a mentorship program for other speech language pathologists that are either opening up their own business or who are contract workers. I have a really big desire to work with women in this field of like opening their heart and working and managing in a way that is from the feminine heart space rather than this like structural way of doing things. And I think that can open up so many avenues in other areas, right? It's not just about in our career. So that's like a really big desire of mine. And I think that will fill me in a different way in motherhood and in being a wife than what I'm doing right now. And eventually, yeah, my practice, maybe someone is running it that I fully trust and is doing an amazing job, or I sell it.
Yeah,
So yeah.
got it. Okay. Interesting. So how do you plan on kind of scaling things back whilst doing these new? Out of curiosity, like what's your? You mentioned you're kind of 120% right now, which obviously isn't sustainable for a long period of time, especially with kind of new commitments, family and such. How do you plan to take a step back, and is that something you're already working on? Have you kind of postponed that a little bit? Like what steps do you plan to take to pull back and get down to just 50%?
Yes, it's something that I've been actively working on one step at a time. I have a office manager who recently is taking on more more hours. So she's almost full time. So that's helped tremendously to manage my team. And I'm also learning about myself and what areas am I doing too much for my therapist, and almost like this need to control. So me having to just like step back, let mistakes happen, let my therapist figure them out on their own rather than me kind of being this like micromanager. Um, so that's definitely a step that I'm taking, and just open to the possibility of eventually like, yeah, having one of my SLPs take a big management role and kind of take over my role, but I'm not searching for that person. I'm just kind of trusting that it will come. And that's kind of how I've always worked in this business, is like creating the space, creating the potential of the opportunity. And then if it's meant to be, it just shows up. So I trust that.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay. I know I kind of dove headfirst into the kind of online and the play better that you're obviously running. If we were to take a step back, talk me through the journey from going or of going from opening your private practice, and I assume being a kind of solo practitioner there, through to building a team of, how big did you see your team is now? Was it sort of like seven, or did I mishear that?
Yes, we have 7 pediatric therapists, but we also have like 2 or 3 support professionals that help.
So how long into your journey of opening your own private practice did it take you to kind of bring on the first team member, and what did that look like, and how have you then scaled up to seven plus others?
Yeah. Um, when I first started my practice, I had a full case, like, and after what, like 6 months, I had a full caseload. And so I started getting more referrals that I didn't have anywhere to put them. So I asked a friend who had not my own job. I said, "Hey, do you want some extra hours? I can pay you this much." And so she's like, "Yeah, sure." And she started with me. That was my first therapist. I definitely had my own limiting belief around being a boss, being a private practice owner. And so I didn't really mentor or supervise this therapist. I kind of was just like, yeah, she's just seeing my client, you know? Um, and I worked through that belief, and eventually it took about 3 years. I would say 3 years into my practice, I had therapists that I hired on, but we weren't a team. It was just like, they're seeing this client for me, right? We weren't a team. And I worked on it and it was really important. It was really important for me to work on that because now I have a team and I have therapists that we're all giving our own individual unique gifts, but we're in a group together working for a similar goal. And I'm leading the team. And so that's been really something that's been huge in establishing community and the service models that we're able to present, because we're all working together and we all have a similar goal. Whereas before it was like these therapists were just working for me and getting paid, and we didn't have a similar mission and like a similar. It wasn't all coming from our heart. It wasn't coming from our heart, you know. And right now, my team, we meet weekly and we talk about all of the things personal and professional because it all kind of intertwines, right? And we're like a sisterhood,
Mm,
and it's been really impactful, like to establish that connection within us, because connection is ultimately what we're working on outside of us in our own with our own clients.
mm.
So I fully believe that we can work on these things in every aspect of our life. Um, if we can connect with each other, then we're going to connect with our clients and the parents and all that.
Absolutely. Is there anything you've done intentionally to build that sisterhood, or build the kind of mutually incentivize people to work towards the same target rather than working in their own silos and kind of feeling that they're competing almost with one another?
Yeah. Yeah, I like that, working in their own silos. That's a good one. I pay a lot. I invest in my own therapy. Um, I think that's been my own coach. She is she's not a business coach, but she's like a mentor and like opening my heart. So I've worked with a coach before I met my husband to just open myself up, become vulnerable, take risks. And she's helped me so much. I mean, when I started working with her, my hourly rate was $90. My hourly rate now is 200, and it and no, I know that doesn't mean too much, but it does. Like for me to increase that much in the last 4 years,
Of
I've been
course.
working with her for 4 years. Um, and my business was two SLPs when I met her, and now it's this like we make like 40 to $50,000 a month. Like
Mm,
we have lots of people, we're helping
amazing.
so many people. So
Mhm.
she's really helped me in just like this idea that like stepping into my fullness is what the world needs. And I do believe that she's impacted my ability to step into my fullness around other women. And that's inspired them to step into their fullness and just being in connection with each other. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's been a
Absolutely.
huge
Yes.
inspiration into working with this in this way with other women. And I never really, working in this capacity with other women it's a little nuanced, it's a little scary because um yeah, we all are we're competitive, right? That's how we're brought up to be, and people's successes scare us. And working in this way, we're just inspired by each other has really impacted, I think, all of us. So
Yeah, I'm with you. Is there anything on a what's the best way to describe this? Is there anything tactically or anything strategically you've implemented? For example, is there anything on the back end financially that incentivizes people to work one another? Or is it really that they're kind of financially incentivized to work on their own clients really, and it's just emotional support more so they're getting from kind of supporting one another? And when I ask that, just to clarify, like, is there any sort of I don't know how you structure it with them, but is there any sort of like incentives overall for if the company hits a certain level for everybody, or are they all kind of looking at it in their own lane? They're just focused on their own client base and such.
yeah, good question. When I first so we do a team meeting every week, and when I first implemented this, I had a therapist that was like, "Are you paying us?" And she's no longer with us. And so it's like as you evolve and you like put new places things in place, people that aren't in the same vibe, they're gonna fall off, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Um, and what I told my team was, "Hey, listen, like this space that I'm gonna hold for you guys isn't for me. It's really to support you in being the best therapist for your individual clients. And the better therapists that they are, the more clients they're going to keep, the more clients are going to ask for them, um, the more the more flexibility they're going to have in their schedules. Like if your clients love you, you can work as many or as less hours as you want. And if your clients are asking for it, your rate is going to increase. So the only reason why I've increased my rate is because I have like parents like begging to work with me. So I tell my team, when you start to have parents begging to work with you, I have to increase your rate. It's just supply and demand, right? So
Hmm.
they know that, and it's happened to a few of them. So I feel like that is
Hmm.
the incentive. They also can
Yeah.
tell their clients are staying on their caseload. I can tell when a therapist isn't performing because the clients fall off or they get sick and they don't want to reschedule. And a good therapist, if a client gets sick, the parent is trying their best to reschedule because they don't want to lose their time. So
Hmm.
all of the things that we work on in our team meetings are really just to establish connection and relationship with our families so that we can be the best therapists for them. And I
Absolutely.
think, and ever since having the meetings, I haven't had any pushback because they see it and they sense it. And
Hmm.
yeah, they're excited.
Wonderful. That makes perfect sense. That was a really good answer. I appreciate how you kind of shed light on. They see the value in it, right? Because it helps them within their own career, and there's a payoff for them just implementing kind of what you have to teach essentially as well. Um, what do you see as if we kind of look out into the future again? You kind of talked about your goal in terms of pulling back maybe again from 120% down to 50% and having more time to kind of allocate to other areas of your life. What do you see as being the biggest, in fact, let me reframe that slightly. Looking on to obviously remind me, what was the name of your program to support parents in terms of play with their children again?
Play better.
Play better. And then your other goal to create a sort of program from the sounds of it to support other pathologists in their own career. What do you see as being the biggest hurdle to moving more into those things and essentially growing those arms of the business as compared to the private practice in terms of making that maybe the main thing for you? Is there any challenges or hurdles you see that you would have to overcome to really turn those into standalone successes for you?
Yes. Biggest challenge is going to be like the reach on social media. I don't want to spend time on social media, and I know that I will have to. And so finding the balance is going to be difficult. Finding the balance of like what feels good and creating content that feels good and also is productive and effective. And then also the sales component. So my husband is he has his own business and he's in marketing and sales, and he's always telling me advice, giving me advice about selling my product. And I've never had to sell before, right? So I'm, have a business and I have all these clients and these referrals, but I've never really had to sell. I get on calls weekly and I sell my programs and my products through my business, but I'm not really selling. They already want it. So, it's going to be a tough transition for me in the virtual field and, on social media to have to sell. That's going to be tough.
When you say that's tough, is that purely from a perspective of you just really don't want to be spending time on social media? Is it also that perhaps you don't know how best to go about it, so you're concerned that you'd be inefficient with how you're spending time doing it? Like, what's the hard part or the fear there for you?
The fear is in knowing how well. I don't know. Like, there's a lot I don't know. So like my idea of knowing how social media works and how much I have to show my face over and over and over to get someone interested. And then secondly, like this idea around like the push, like having to prove my worth or my content or what I have to put out there, having to prove it and pushing it on people so that they want it. I've just never had to do that before. So, like Zach, my husband, he's like, you have this weird thing about sales. Like you have this weird negative connotation around selling that you need to work on. And I know that that's true. So.
And what do you think that is? Is it that you're fearful of people not? I'm curious. Like I'm just kind of guessing here. Is it a financial thing about the families not necessarily having the money to invest? Is it that they're saying no? Is it that you feel like you shouldn't have to sell because it should be something they come to you for? Like, what do you think that hesitation is?
Yeah, good question. I think it has to do with this belief that if I have to sell an idea to someone, they're not going to be my ideal client because I'm looking for someone that I don't have to like push information on it. I'm looking for someone that just is like open and ready to receive, to give. So it just feels a little forced.
Are you doing anything specifically from a social media point of view in order to aid the growth of the Play Better program at the moment? Do you have a strategy in place? Do you have anything you're consciously doing there?
No.
So the content on your social media, because I saw there's like some reels and some different content on your Instagram, is that just kind of spur of the moment whenever something comes to mind, whenever you have some time, you're just kind of putting something out there?
Yeah. So I think that my like creation and my inspiration, like, it doesn't come day by day by day. It's just like these moments that I'm just like, this is what I want to share right now. And that feels really good for me. Thinking of a strategy and like putting something out there like that's logical and structured, it's hard for me. It feels like closure to me, like, oh my gosh, now I have to really like have a strategy about like what's coming from my heart. So that's hard. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah. Do you think that's possibly a limiting belief that if people are
Yeah.
willing to pay you so much for this, for like pay you $200 an hour, right? that if you were just putting out small nuggets of what you're teaching for free online, that would be like, people would love that, right? Is it more just kind of overcoming the mental barrier to doing it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think you're right. I think like with more space, I might, like I do want to. Um,
Because I hate to be forward here, but it seemed from everything I've heard from kind of what you've said so far, the model for if you did want to kind of grow, play better, and then obviously your other program working with pathologists down the line seems super obvious to me, right? Like all you would do is, and possibly someone could help you with kind of creating the ideas for content, so you're not stuck there like, oh, what do I put out, what do I create, just kind of giving you ideas as to what content to create, but literally just putting out content month after month or week after week after week, building your audience. And then whenever you have spaces to fill in your next cohort of kind of 8 or whatever it is for Play Better, then is your only kind of promotion cycle. It's only then that you're coming up to the next enrollment or next cohort that you're starting. Do you say, hey, I've opened up some slots on my calendar, and then it's maybe 1 week of selling, and then another 2 months of just adding value, building your audience, and then again you open up your calendar, and then that way you've spent so much time adding value with no promotion, no selling, no nothing on your social media. Then when people are booking in time on your calendar, it's the only point every so often that you are selling. I don't think you would have to sell that hard to them. Like they've got so much value from you already that if they're then booking in a conversation with you, I would assume you can't have what you already have in the private practice where people trust you so much that they're kind of just ready to go. Of course, there are some people financially they may need to figure out, and you can have different options in play there. But yeah, just kind of having heard everything you've talked about and the way you've got it set up with the private practice and how well that works for you, that seems like the obvious play here. Does that sort of make sense, or is that something you've maybe already considered and it just didn't kind of work out for you for whatever reason?
no, I think that's absolutely correct. It makes complete sense. Um, I think that I just haven't intentionally put the space to that plan on social media. And I'd like to, and I've wanted to. So it's really just on me to do it.
With you. Um, okay. Look, I also recognize that we're getting towards the end of the kind of hour slot, and I want to be respectful of your time here, Casey, but I think this has been a really valuable and varied conversation for people listening. I think they're going to get a lot of value just in terms of understanding how you went from getting out of studying to kind of working for a year and then starting your own successful private practice and getting it to where you have. I love the confidence you have in what you're doing. Even if you don't necessarily know the answer straight away, you have the confidence, the faith that you'll find it out and you'll get what you need to kind of get to the next stage, at least is kind of what I've got from this. If there's anybody who is in your shoes when you were just working as a solo practitioner and they want to get to the point where they're hiring other people to work alongside them or below them and kind of build their private practice or build their coaching company, doing something else, hire other coaches. Is there anything that you've learned now that you've hired? I'm assuming you must have hired close to 10 if you've had 1 or 2 leave and you've got others on top of the 7. Is there anything that you wish you knew before you started hiring coaches or hiring other people to work below you that if you did know would have made your life a lot easier and would have saved a lot of kind of time and headache and wasted money?
Fire slow, fire fast. um, Trusting my gut intuition from the beginning if something doesn't feel good. Not seeing someone's potential and just noticing something not aligned like right away and addressing it right away instead of spending time hoping it would work out. I think that's a really important skill to have when you're running a business and you have your own practice. And secondly, just in growing a practice, I think it's really important and growing a practice and coaching other people. I think it's really important to remember that you can be really good at your skill. You can be an expert at your skill, but what's most important is like how you make people feel. And if you can make someone feel good, your team, your clients, yourself, that's really the biggest piece. That's what people want to be next to and want to be in. And I think that's really important if you're working in a group and you're working with people. It's very simple,
Absolutely.
but I think it's really important.
I entirely agree, and I think those are going to be really, really valuable insights that you've shared there for those listening, Casey. Just before I let you go, if anybody has heard this and they're like, wow, I need to connect with Casey, I need to see more of what she shares, I need to learn some more from her, where's the best place for people to do that? Where are you typically most active online?
Only Instagram is where I am most active. Casey Carrington SLP. I think that's
I'll
really
leave
it.
that link below as
I'm
well.
not really a Facebook person, and I would love to have my own podcast one day. I will tell you, my idea for a podcast is to just interview all of my autistic parents, all the parents that have autistic kiddos, because I think there's a need for a relatability and being seen and heard in the chaos of life. When I have my podcast, then they can find me there too.
When do you plan on starting that, and what's in the way?
Yeah, that's
Just
gonna
time?
start. That's gonna start when I'm at my 50% mark.
That makes sense. Yeah, I don't
But
think
I
you're in
mean,
the
yeah,
sort of
I could
space where you
start
want to add more
tomorrow.
on.
But yeah, I mean, I could start tomorrow, right? I really love connecting with parents. Yeah. So,
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Casey. I'll end the recording now.